Okay, hey guys. So we're going to be talking about a subject I love a lot, which is creativity and the Create book. And actually, I just delivered this high school class in Connecticut. I love teaching students of that age because that's when I really became a photographer. Now, before we get into that, let's just thank our good friends over at Bay Photo Lab. And remember that you can get their specials. Here's 15% off on framed photographic and fine art prints. You can always grab one of those after the show. 15% off on metal prints. And as always, you can get 25% off on your first order. So head on over to Bay Photo Lab after the show. But now join me as I talk about creativity. And by the way, even if you've heard this before, listen to it again because you're going to get something out of it. And thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you. I wish I actually was in the room there with you, but thank you, Meg, for inviting me. I love talking to students of your age because in high school is really when I became a professional photographer. I'll tell you a little bit about my story and I want to talk about the process of creativity. Everything I'm going to talk about will be applicable to all of these areas, generally to art, definitely specifically to photography and filmmaking. I do all these things myself. Now, I'm going to just share this presentation with you. And please feel free to take notes. I'm a big note taker. I have notebooks that I use all the time. Can you see that all right? You can all see that? Okay, good. So these are just initial questions I'd like you to think about. What is creativity? We use this word. What does it mean? And are there exact parts to it? This is a question I started asking maybe 10 years ago. I started with photography. What are the stages of photography? How does it break down? Because you can think about photography, you can think about any art form, and we do really well when we can sort of break things down into its parts and study each part and see how those parts fit together. When you do that, you can also see how it can be strengthened. So like we do this all the time with sports. We break down any given sport, whether it's basketball, tennis, golf, whatever, football. You break it down into its parts and you practice those parts over and over again, and you can become a better athlete. Well, can we do the same thing with art and creativity? And the answer is yes. But we first have to really determine what are those parts. First of all, in the Oxford Dictionary, creativity is defined as the use of the imagination or original ideas to create something. You're using your power of imagination, which is an incredibly important skill that starts the entire creative process. Imagining things, everything we've seen that we consider beautiful, whether it's a movie or a painting or a piece of literature, it started in that artist's or writer's mind as something they imagined. And then from there, they took the steps to create it and bring it into an actuality where other people could see it or experience it. But this is the most vital step, is really finding the power of imagination and how it fits in with the other steps. And my goal for you, that's a photograph right down the road from where I live. We see lots of sunsets like this, and we're right on the Pacific Ocean. My goal for you is to leave this class with an improved ability to do your art, whatever that is. I hope that I can help you find more focus or find some tools that will enable you as an artist. Now, Breaking down creativity, there are 5 stages to creativity. In the center, you see that big circle, big sphere called visualization. I'm going to play a video for you in a minute describing what that means, but visualization is getting it in your mind, getting an idea in your mind before you do it. And that turns out to be the most important part of the whole process, because without an idea, nothing happens. You have to get an idea, and then from there, you have to understand the tools. So in photography, we have a lot of tools. We have the camera. The camera breaks down into all these different settings. I understand you guys have a dark room. That's so fantastic. I started as a dark, when I was in the 7th grade, I learned about the dark room, and that made me a photographer. I instantly became in love with this process of going out and photographing something, developing the negative, and then printing it. And I have to say, I kind of miss that process, but I kind of don't. I do. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm only a digital photographer. I do have film cameras, and I should get out there and shoot film. But those tools that you learn as a photographer are also not just the kind of the mechanical things with the camera, but there's tools of lighting, there's tools of composition, which you learn as well. And those are also applicable to filmmaking. Every art form has its set of tools. Then you have to do this next step, which is called working your craft, which means you got to get out there and do it. And many people, unfortunately, just get hung up on the equipment. If you go to the internet, you go to YouTube, one of my chief complaints is it's mostly talking about equipment, and not too much about the art form. I do have a YouTube channel, which you can look up, by the way, afterwards. Just look for my name, Marc Silber, MarcSilber, and you'll find that YouTube channel. You'll also find my Instagram, where I put up short little videos, reels and that sort of thing. You can find those things. But I really like to talk about the tools of art and composition, that sort of thing. Then you work your craft. You got to get out there and do it. So just having an idea alone won't make anything happen. That's the first step, but then you got to get out there and do it. And then the next stage is called editing, which is, in a dark room, we go in, we process our negatives, we print them. That's kind of all part of the editing process. In filmmaking, we're always shooting and then editing. When I shoot something, I do a lot of interview videos, which are like a key component in doing documentaries. And while I'm interviewing the person, I'm always thinking, how is this? Have they answered it adequately, or is that answer something I want to use? If not, I'm going to ask more questions. If they've answered it, I go on to something else. So I'm kind of editing in my head, which is not always a good thing, by the way. Generally speaking, you don't want to do that. You want to go out and shoot your photographs, shoot your film, put your ideas out there, and later, as a second step, or actually in this case, it's the 4th step, you do your editing. Try not to mix those two together, or you end up just self-critiquing yourself into oblivion. Don't do that. So that's a point where a lot of artists fall down, where they're just critiquing themselves. Oh, this isn't any good. Oh, nobody will like that. Oh, I'm not a good photographer. Don't do that. We all unfortunately do, but try to discipline yourself not to do that. Do your editing as its own process. This makes sense so far? Wave your hand in the air if it does. I want to make sure. Good, thank you. Okay. The last stage, really, really important. That's sharing your work, getting your work out somewhere, somehow. And there's lots of ways to share besides social media. We generally think of sharing meaning just social media, but it's kind of the least desirable way to share your work, actually. It's kind of like eating fast food. It may taste good, but it's not really the best thing for you. I love French fries and Big Macs too, but it's not really very healthy. So it's better to find healthier ways to share your work. In school, there's a lot of ways to do this. You can get maybe your photographs into the yearbook or into an exhibit, or you can make your own books, which is something I really like. I made my first book in the 8th grade with a friend of mine. I meant to bring it. I have it kind of tucked away, but it was a combination. He was writing poetry, and I did the photographs to go with it. We made our first book, and my only regret is that we didn't publish it. It's never been published. We didn't have the tools that you guys have today to get a book out there. It's actually fairly easy to publish a book. There's a lot of different tools out there. We work with a company here called Bay Photo Lab. They'll make, you can make a book with them. You can make prints with them. They're really very awesome because they have great customer service and we use them all the time. But you can take your idea and put it together. And if you know another artist like I did and collaborate with them, you do the visuals, they do the writing. That's actually a really cool way to make a book. So that's an example of sharing your work, getting your work exhibited somewhere in a library. Libraries are always looking for stuff to display. You can find different ways, and I describe those in my book, Create. But this is really important because without getting your work out to the world, it just sort of sits there. And it can sit in a box of photographs or on your hard drive or writing or drawing or whatever. And it's not satisfying until you get it out to let other people have a look at it. So these are the 5 stages of creativity. When we look at it, we can develop each one. And the key is visualization. There's a question I know that's going to come at the end, but I might as well answer it right now, which is how can you train your eye to see photographs? And that's actually a really good question. You do exactly what you see. This is one of my assistants' hands. Holly was holding her hands up like this. And this is something I recommend that you do for both, actually any visual art form, whether it's photography or drawing or filmmaking. Use your hands as a framing device. And the reason why that's important is our eyes are going to see in a very wide arc. But when you take a photograph, you're using a rectangle, usually, sometimes a square, and you want to train your eye to be able to see those photographs. So you can do it like this, or you can do it like that. I generally go like this. And if you're walking around look for photographs. Try to find those photographs that are around us all the time. And it's like training anything. As I said earlier, in sports, we just sometimes take one skill and practice it over and over again. Like you're playing tennis, you practice one swing over and over again, or you practice your serve. So this is something you should practice all the time. And I don't care where you are, if you're waiting for somebody, you're in a grocery store. I mean, people will think you're cool. You're like, hey, what's that person doing? And the other cool thing is you can do what I'm doing. You can move in or out. Like if you want to make the appearance of something looking smaller, move it out. You want to get a wider view. This is like a zoom lens. This would be a wide angle here, and this would be becoming more and more telephoto. Why that is so important is because before you pick up a camera, or before you pick up a video camera or a paintbrush, you first have to see what it is you're going to create. So I recommend this drill to you guys all the time. Hey, I hope you guys did enjoy that. And as always, I love having you with us, and leave your comments, okay? And I love it when you share. And as always, remember to get out and capture your own images of life.